Okay, so today we're looking at how to tackle the question on the anthology section, Power and Conflict, AQA syllabus. Bit of a long one, so do have your pen and pad ready and the pause button. And without further ado, we'll crack on. Okay, so assessment objectives in a similar way to your Macbeth and or Shakespeare and your Jekyll and Hyde or Christmas Carol. You've 30 marks for this question, and they're divided into 12, 12 and 6 in the same way. They're up there, AO1, AO2, AO3. You can have a little read of them. I don't need to go over them again. So there is more than one way to skin a cat, or perhaps a little less graphic, there's more than one way to cook an egg. What that boils, funny pun, what that boils down to really is there's more than one way to write a top grade answer. Okay, I'm just going to show you one way to structure an answer, one way to tackle the question. You may watch this video and decide that you prefer the way your own teacher has advised to do it. But either way, this is a solid way to structure your answer and will secure you top grades if you follow all the steps. Okay, that it's all good. There should be in some kind of American accent. It's all good. I can't do an American accent, so I won't. Okay, so what does the question look like? Here's an example Power and Conflict question on the AQA paper. Compare the ways poets present ideas about power in Ozymandias and in one other poem from Power and Conflict. So remember, you'll have a printed poem and then you'll have to compare it to one of the other 14 poems on the anthology. Key words here, power, ideas about power. Okay. Most important word in the question, though, is the first one, compare. You must compare in every paragraph. For example, don't just analyse one poem and then go and analyse the second poem. Compare the structure of each poem in the same paragraph. Okay, so you're comparing poems in every paragraph. I'm going to demonstrate just how many paragraphs you should do and what section and what topics to cover within these paragraphs. But you must compare in each paragraph. You need to identify the second poem. In this case, I'm going to use My Last Duchess. Okay, so bear that in mind. You can go and grab a copy of it now, have it beside you. I'll be giving you some notes on it in a minute. So you know that you've got to compare. You've read the question. You know it's ideas about power. You've decided yourself, okay, Ozymandias and My Last Duchess is a good comparison. I'll explore a little bit later how to decide which poem to compare it to. But the first thing you need to do is to read the question, highlight the key words. In this case, ideas about power is a central point of the question. Okay, so make sure it's clear. Even highlight that, just so it sticks in your mind. So once you've done this, you know that every point you make must address this in some way. Use the language of the question in each paragraph, or synonyms of power in this case, so control or manipulation are all examples of power. Now you can read through the poem and highlight, underline everything you notice that relates to the question. But reversing up a little bit, how do I select the second poem? That's a good question. The best advice, straight from the examiners, is to base your answer on an idea or attitude, and then take a two-pronged approach to the question. So you should be looking to link two poems based on their meaning or their ideas, what their topic is, rather than how they're structured or them both being in a sonnet form, for example. So both Ozymandias and My Last Duchess deal with the issue of diminishing power, lessening power. However, one is dealing with how the passage of time reduces power. So Ozymandias, over the centuries, his statue kind of withers away almost. However, whilst the other explores the power of the individual in a relationship, in this case, the Duke over his wife, the Duchess. Some tips. You then need to focus on language, form, structure and effect in your answer, using relevant terminology where possible. I provide you with a lot of the terms later on. And making links with context where appropriate. Remember, 20% of your marks go for context. If it helps, you could follow the SMILE structure. That was a smile. That was a grimace. Keep watching, it's coming up. I'll talk you through how to structure your answer following that format. Again, you don't have to. It's just one example, one way. Use the language of the question throughout. Very important. Link everything you're saying back to the question, okay, in every paragraph and for each poem. And there'll be similarities and differences. And another tip, a topic sentence at the start of each paragraph which addresses the question directly will ensure that you remain focused on the actual question. One of my students last year asked me 2 weeks before the exam, he said, "Sir, how do you think I'll do?" And I said to him simply, if you answer the question, you'll get a 9. If you don't and you go off on a tangent and you just analyse for analysis' sake, you won't. He actually got 2 9s, so he answered the question. Okay, so how to structure your answer using the SMILE format. Remember, you are analysing these poems in terms of how they link with either power or conflict or both. It's the power and conflict section, so don't shy away from that. Now, you could write a little introduction and then follow the SMILE format. This is an indication or a kind of the skeleton of how the SMILE format will look. I do apply it to the actual question later on, so do stick around. Introduction. Introduce your second poem immediately and straight away set about comparing. For example, both Ozymandias and My Last Duchess deal with the issue of diminishing power. However, one is dealing with how the passage of time reduces power, whilst the other explores the power of the individual in a relationship. Do you notice here? These 3 words, they're all comparative connectors. I'm comparing straight away. I've introduced my second poem, I've addressed the question directly, and I'm comparing the 2 with that question in mind. Straight away, I'm scoring points. Give the examiner every opportunity to give you marks. Okay, oops, go back. Structure and form. So the S, I've highlighted it in pinky purple to match the SMILE format at the top. Is the poem in a particular style? For example, is it a sonnet? Is it a dramatic monologue? Can this be linked to context? Is there any rhyme scheme? Is there any reason you can think of for the specific words being rhymed? If there is no rhyme scheme, why do you think that may be? Are there stanzas? Is it just one long piece of text? Is there a regular line length or is it irregular? With each of these, you need to identify or explore an effect, the impact. So what reason could the poet have for the absence of a rhyme scheme, for example? Is punctuation used to help add meaning? Are different types of sentences used to create effects? Do sentences run on, technique and genre, or stop, end stop, stop at the end of the line with some punctuation? Is caesura, any punctuation located in the middle of a line, used? What does this tell us about the mentality of the persona or the narrator or the poet? It could be autobiographical. Okay, so after S we have, I've gone back, hang on. After S we've got M. So meaning or mood. So what's the poem about? Are there any hidden messages? What is the attitude or tone of this poem or speaker? Serious, angry, sad, regretful, and so on. Choose your own words. Can this link to context? Imagery. What word pictures or images are used in the extract? Imagery is about language choices, not just techniques. Is there a semantic field for war, for example? Are there any similes, comparisons using like or as, or are they metaphors or extended metaphors? Is there any use of personification? Language. What are the key words or phrases which stand out in this text? Does it use imperatives, commands, instructions, or does it exaggerate, hyperbole? Or litotes, understatement? Are there any other writing techniques which stand out, such as rhetorical questions, emotive language, alliteration, or repetition? Zoom in on specific word choices and explore their effect. Identify your technique. Remember the P2C, point, evidence, technique, explanation. You need to follow that kind of format within each paragraph as well. And the E, finally, effects. This isn't a separate paragraph on its own, but you incorporate this into every paragraph. What was the impact of the use of specific techniques? What impact did it have on the reader, etc.? And you can have a brief conclusion, a summative sentence that links directly back to the question. Okay, here's a page that you can just, if you're on your mobiles, just screenshot it. A few poetic devices that you need to familiarise yourself with, and they'll help you in not only the anthology question, but in the unseen poetry section as well. Okay, so we'll move on. So back to the question. Here's the question again. Compare the ways poets present ideas about power in Ozymandias and in one other poem from Power and Conflict. Remember, I've decided to use My Last Duchess as the poem for comparison. So here's my introduction. I think this is the third time I'll be reading this, but it's a decent introduction. Both Ozymandias and My Last Duchess explore ideas about power, in particular the power of man over individuals and nature. Ozymandias focuses on how a once powerful ruler has, over time, fallen foul to the power of nature, whereas My Last Duchess focuses more on the power of a man attempts to exert over his wife, and the ramifications of this abuse of his power. Okay, so in the black there I've just said, look, there's a comparison, there's a direct link to the question. Okay, I'm scoring marks straight away. Now, I've written the first paragraph to this question, or an example of the first paragraph, sample opening you could write. I've given you the further points, I haven't written them for you, but here's an example, so you can follow this for the future points as well. So I've gone on and I'm talking about structure, form and structure perhaps. Ozymandias takes the form of a sonnet. Like a Petrarchan sonnet, it has a turning point, a volta in line 9, but it doesn't follow a regular sonnet rhyme scheme, perhaps reflecting the way human power and structures can be destroyed over time by nature. So I've identified a technique, but more importantly, I've explored the effect of that technique and I've linked it directly to the question. Okay, I've talked about power and how it can be diminished or destroyed over time. The story is a second-hand account, a bit of context there. I'm aware of what the nature of the poem, which distances it even further from the reader, with the narrator focusing on the statue piece by piece before revealing how it now lies isolated in a vast desert, perhaps implying its insignificance. So a reference to power in the question, perhaps it's tentative analysis. I don't know for sure. I'm offering an interpretation. Okay, so that's the first poem. Still in the same paragraph. By contrast, there's my comparative connective. My Last Duchess is a dramatic monologue, so that's different to a sonnet, written in iambic pentameter, reflecting the one-sided conversation the Duke is having with the visitor. The rhyming couplets highlight the Duke's desire for control. I'm linking directly to the question, whilst the enjambment could reflect how he fails to maintain this control, again linking to the question. Caesura technique is used to reflect how his current thoughts are still interrupted. Remember, caesura is any form of punctuation in the middle of a line. So we can link that or connect that to the idea that his thoughts are interrupted by the memory of the Duchess. Even as he is escorting an important visitor on a tour of his home and possessions, he's still fixated on his last Duchess. So quite straightforward, quite simple. I've identified all the elements of a paragraph I need to get the top band, and I've compared in detail how the two poems match up under form and structure. So, further points you could make. Remember the smile format, so meaning, mood or tone and a bit of context here. This isn't written in paragraph form. You can pad this out a little bit. Ozymandias is a second-hand account of the crumbling condition of a statue of a once powerful king who ruled over a past civilization. Ozymandias is a reference to the recent unearthing of a part of a large statue of Egyptian pharaoh Ramesses II. So a bit of context. Shelley was a romantic poet who leaned more towards science and nature than religion. The Romantics believed in emotion rather than reason, and Shelley also disliked monarchies, absolute power, and any oppression of ordinary people, an attitude that can be identified in this poem. In the title of Browning's poem, my, possessive pronoun, implies ownership and control. So don't ignore the titles in your poems. They're valid things to analyse and incorporate into your answer. So my is a personal pronoun, kind of implies ownership and control. Whilst last in the title suggests that she was one in a line of wives, with more to come perhaps, and maybe meeting the same fate that she did. Browning, a master of the dramatic monologue as a romantic poet, was also critical of autocratic rule, so monarchy and and an issue that lies at the heart of this poem. The story is based on an Italian duke, Ferrara, who lived in the 16th century, whose wife, Lucrezia, died in suspicious circumstances 3 years into their marriage. And the last point or points you could make focus on language and imagery. In Ozymandias, irony plays a central theme to convey Shelley's hatred of oppression. The arrogance of this king of kings all came to nothing, as his only legacy is the decay of that colossal wreck. Alliteration of boundless and bare and lone and level emphasises the empty space now surrounding this once powerful ruler, again reflecting Shelley's view that the power of nature and time can destroy anything human or man-made. Poem is full of powerful and angry language to suggest the tyranny of this ruler and reflect the true power which lies with nature. However, in My Last Duchess, whilst perhaps lacking in powerful imagery, it is full of language related to his possessions. So there's a comparison, a difference. One of which being the Duchess, to mirror his obsession with being able to exert power over others and control those closest to him. He sees his wife as an object, and like other possessions, likes to collect them. Then all smiles stop together. It is quite cold, dark, and after he gave commands appears to be a euphemism for his wife's murder, as the ultimate demonstration of his power and control. The Duke is very proud, as status is very important to him, and he could not accept anyone who did not bow to his commands, especially or even his wife. Okay, so there's an awful lot there. But you've got the power of technology. You can pause, you can screenshot, jot down some notes, and use as you wish. Okay, that's a wrap. No, that's a wrap. I'm so sorry. Okay. Okay, that's me. Tune in again for future videos. Cheers, guys. Bye-bye.